Police question. Black woman in VIP lounge, unaware. She's the CIO of the airline airports, often serve as portals to new horizons. A flurry of business travelers checking stock prices, families embarking on long-planned vacations, and VIPs enjoying exclusive lounges tucked away from the din. But behind the polished corridors and the gleaming gates, biases and snap judgments sometimes lurk. Today's story begins at Hartsfield-Jackson Atlanta International Airport, the bustling hub of Delta Airlines. In a twist of fate, police officers confront a poised black woman in the airline's luxurious Sky Club lounge, suspecting she doesn't belong there. Little do they know that this unassuming passenger is Katie Morgan, the newly appointed CEO of the very airline they serve. Katie Morgan paced in front of the floor-to-ceiling windows in the Delta Sky Club lounge at Hartsfield-Jackson Atlanta International Airport. She gazed out at the runway, where Delta's signature planes lined up for takeoff. As the newly promoted CEO, she was both excited and apprehensive about the future of the airline. She had joined Delta Airlines years ago in a lower management position, working tirelessly through an array of challenges to climb the corporate ladder. Now she was not just any traveler. She was the top executive of one of the largest airlines in the world. Yet Katie was a private person. Despite her high-ranking role, she dressed modestly and carried herself with a calm grace that often led others to underestimate her. She wore a tailored navy blue suit and carried a slim briefcase, quietly reviewing slides for an upcoming meeting in New York. No nameplate, no flashy jewelry. She believed in letting her work speak for itself. Her phone buzzed with texts from various department heads, each needing updates on everything from pilot scheduling to in-flight menu revisions, negotiating union contracts, reviewing new tech for the upcoming premium cabins. The responsibilities were endless, but she thrived on it. She thrived on problem-solving and the power of forging an airline experience that treated every passenger with dignity. As Katie settled into an armchair and took a sip of her coffee, she overheard murmurs from a group of travelers at the bar. They were complaining about a delay. Typical one man muttered, oblivious, that the CEO herself sat just a few feet away. Katie felt a pang of concern. Delays tarnished the airline's reputation, and she was determined to reduce them through strategic scheduling and better maintenance protocols. She made a mental note to prioritize that issue in her next meeting. A lounge attendant named Savannah approached politely, offering to refill Katie's coffee. Savannah was new, brimming with enthusiasm, and eager to ensure every guest felt welcome. Katie thanked her warmly, exchanging a smile that conveyed genuine appreciation. It was interactions like these that Katie loved. Brief moments of human connection amid the hustle. She felt a sense of pride, witnessing Delta employees embracing the airline's core values: honesty, empathy, and excellent service. Moments later, Katie heard raised voices at the lounge entrance. She looked up to see two police officers accompanied by a nervous-looking lounge manager. The manager was gesturing in Katie's direction. Something in Katie's gut tightened. Before she could process what might be happening, the manager and the officers approached, "Ma'am." One of the officers began his tone, brusque. "We need to see your pass and identification." He offered no greeting or courtesy. Katie blinked, surprised. "Certainly," she said, pulling out her credentials. She handed over her Delta Sky Club membership card, along with her driver's license. The officer peered at the documents, his expression hard to read. The lounge manager, a young man named Darren, cleared his throat. "We've had some concerns about lounge access," he said slowly. "We're, just making sure everyone here is supposed to be here." Katie's eyebrows rose. She knew full well that Darren recognized her. She had personally participated in orientation sessions for new lounge staff, but apparently he was either too flustered or too stunned to speak up. Maybe he assumed Katie wanted to travel incognito, or maybe there was something else at play. All Katie knew for certain was that the entire situation felt off. She observed the police officers exchanging glances, as though they had already determined she was in the wrong. "Is there a specific concern about my presence?" Katie asked, her voice calm but firm. "Because I'm quite certain I have every right to be here." The second officer, a woman named Officer Palmer, shifted uncomfortably. She glanced at Darren for guidance, but Darren simply shrugged. The first officer's tone turned sharper. "We've received a complaint of an unauthorized individual in the lounge. We need to verify everything. Checks out." Katie inhaled slowly, maintaining composure. She thought about revealing her title CEO of Delta Airlines and shutting down this entire charade instantly, but something held her back. She wanted to see how this situation would play out on its own. A chord to see just how quickly bias and assumptions might escalate. She felt the eyes of other passengers on her, some craning their necks to watch the commotion, others standing awkwardly to one side, uncertain whether to intervene. In that tense moment, Katie realized she might be facing a far bigger issue than a mere misunderstanding. If the lounge manager had enlisted the police without even confirming her membership status first, something was deeply amiss, and Katie Morgan, for all her humility, was not about to let that go unchallenged. Officer Palmer pulled Katie's driver's license closer, scrutinizing every detail Katie could sense, the tension ratcheting up with each passing second. Travelers in the lounge pretended not to stare, but Katie saw their curious, sometimes judgmental glances. The manager Darren hovered near the officers, seemingly unsure whether to step in or stay quiet to Mom. Officer Palmer said at last, her voice tinged with hesitation, "This ID appears valid, but we still need proof of your lounge access." Katie pointed to the Delta Sky Club membership card on the table. "That's valid proof I'm a long-time member. I also have a diamond medallion status with the airline." Despite her measured tone, Katie's pulse quickened. She was not accustomed to being challenged in such a public, humiliating manner, especially not for a lounge membership she was more than entitled to have. In fact, she outranked the entire staff here, but her professional instincts told her to hold that detail back for the moment. Darren broke into the conversation with forced politeness. "The membership card might be outdated, though. We're simply verifying if it's active." Katie's jaw clenched. She remembered renewing that membership less than 2 months ago. She decided to push back, if only a little. "You can check the membership database," she said. "That's something you or the lounge desk staff can easily do." Calling the police seems an extreme step for a membership verification. One of the bystanders, a middle-aged woman in a sharp business suit, stepped forward. "She's right," the woman interjected. "They scanned my card electronically when I entered. Why wouldn't they do the same for her before involving the authorities?" At that, Darren flushed. Katie recognized him from an orientation event months ago, but perhaps he was too new to realize who she was. Or perhaps he had recognized her, but allowed bias to override logic. Without meeting Katie's eyes, Darren cleared his throat again. "We, received a complaint from another guest who suspected suspicious activity." Katie felt her stomach turn. Suspicious activity. She was quietly reviewing her notes and sipping coffee. Her attire was professional, her manner courteous. She wondered what exactly had triggered this so-called suspicion. She glanced around, noticing how most of the other patrons were either white or light-skinned. Could that be the catalyst? The realization stung, But Katie had faced subtle discrimination before. It was hardly new territory. Still, she had never expected it to unfold in her own lounge, one she technically oversaw. The irony was almost too much to bear. Officer Palmer seemed to sense the unease. She turned to Darren, her expression cautious. "Sir, did you actually check her membership at the front desk computer or attempt to confirm it before calling us?" Darren's eyes flickered, revealing his uncertainty. Well, the front desk staff was busy. The complaint sounded urgent. "You overreacted." Katie finished calmly, though the frustration in her voice was audible. She leveled a cool gaze at Darren next time. "Check the database or approach the guest privately. There's absolutely no reason to escalate a trivial matter to law enforcement." Officer Palmer nodded. "Ma'am, I'm inclined to agree. Could you come with us to the front desk? I'd like to see this membership status confirmed." Katie followed the officers, ignoring the hush that fell over the lounge as they passed. Darren trailed behind his posture, screaming discomfort. At the desk, a young woman with a name tag reading Olivia stood ready. She seemed startled to see two police officers, and Katie approach. As soon as Katie handed over her membership card, Olivia swiped it through the computer system. Within seconds, Katie's profile populated on the screen, along with the highest-tier membership status. Olivia's eyes widened. "She's Diamond Medallion Elite, sir," she said, her tone turning respectful. "And she's definitely authorized for the Sky Club officer." Palmer read the details, then turned to Katie. "Ma'am, everything checks out. Apologies for the inconvenience." Katie felt relief, but also anger. She glanced at Darren. He looked ready to sink into the floor, lips parted, as if searching for the right words to salvage his reputation. "I'm sorry for the confusion," he mumbled. We take every complaint seriously." "It's fine," Katie replied in a clipped tone. "I understand you have policies to follow. But let's be clear. Calling the police on a guest, especially one who poses no threat, is not a typical policy. Nor is it good customer service." She could have ended it there. But Katie had seen enough. She decided it was time. Darren knew exactly who he had been dealing with. "Darren," she said, her voice. "Quiet, you might remember me. I spoke at your training session last quarter about customer care and corporate values. I'm Katie Morgan." Darren's confusion deepened. "I'm sorry, Morgan." "Katie." He trailed off, realization dawning on his face. His eyes went wide. "Oh, Ms. Morgan. You're with corporate." Katie inclined her head. "I'm the CEO of Delta Airlines. This is my lounge in my airline's flagship airport, for which I oversee every operational aspect, including how guests and members are treated." The atmosphere went electric. Olivia nearly dropped the membership card in shock. Officer Palmer exchanged a glance with her partner, then back at Katie. Even the other lounge patrons who had wandered over to watch the drama unfold seemed stunned. Darren's mouth opened and closed like a fish, gasping for air. No words forthcoming. With the revelation now out in the open, Katie wondered how they would react. She had never been one for public reprimands, but the gravity of this incident demanded accountability, and Katie Morgan, quiet, composed, and resolute, was determined that this moment would become a turning point in how her airline addressed prejudice and bias within its own ranks. The tension that followed Katie's revelation was palpable. Darren looked as though he might faint on the spot, his cheeks flushing a deep crimson. The two police officers, now realizing they had inadvertently detained the CEO of Delta Airlines, exchanged worried glances. Officer Palmer hastened to apologize again, this time with more sincerity. "Ms. Morgan," she began, We're so sorry for any inconvenience or embarrassment this may have caused you. We were responding to a call." Katie held up a hand, her expression calm but unyielding. "I understand the police have a duty to respond to calls. The real concern here is the basis for that call. Darren, I'd like to speak with you privately. Officers, thank you for your time, but I believe we can resolve this matter now." Officer Palmer nodded. "Yes, ma'am." She and her partner stepped back, relieved to exit a situation that had clearly spiraled beyond what they'd anticipated. A few bystanders still lingered, phones in hand, curious if the CEO would fire Darren on the spot or issue some dramatic condemnation, but Katie had no intention of turning this into a spectacle. She gestured for Darren to follow her to a quieter corner of the lounge, near a potted palm tree that offered some semblance of privacy. First Katie said, voice low but firm, "I want you to tell me exactly what happened and why you involved the police over a membership verification issue." Darren swallowed hard. "We had a guest, an older gentleman, who approached me, saying he was uncomfortable. He pointed at you and said something about how you were acting. Suspicious. I didn't see anything suspicious myself, but he seemed pretty adamant and Katie's eyebrows rose. You took his complaint at face value and escalated straight to the police. I tried to see if you were, a threat," Darren stammered, stumbling over his own words. "But I guess I panicked. The gentleman had hinted you might be involved in some illicit deal because you were on your phone. I didn't know what to do. I'm new here, and the lounge staff told me to always take complaints seriously." Katie closed her eyes, momentarily, trying to quell the frustration that pulsed like a migraine behind her temples. "Darren, do you realize how this looks? You singled me out, apparently, on one traveler's unfounded suspicion. You made no attempt to quietly verify my membership or identity. You also never approached me politely to address any concern. Instead, you summoned the police to question a perfectly valid customer, and as it turns out, your own CEO, Darren, bit his lip tears, threatening at the corners of his eyes. I know I really messed up. He was so insistent, and I didn't want trouble. I thought if something went wrong, and I didn't call security, I'd get in trouble for ignoring a complaint." Katie recognized that Darren was caught between fear and inexperience. Still, the repercussions of his action were serious. She knew that employees like Darren could either grow from this mistake or remain stuck in a cycle of bias-laden decisions. She sighed, softening her gaze slightly. "I do appreciate that you wanted to protect the lounge, but the steps you took were disproportionate, and to be candid, it raises the question of whether racial bias played a role here." Darren blanched. I never meant... I don't see color like that. My best friend is..." Katie held up a hand, stopping him gently. She had heard that defensive refrain too many times before. "Don't you can learn from this. Darren, but don't deny what happened. Reflect on how quickly you jumped to conclusions, or at least accepted someone else's baseless concerns without verifying the simplest facts." He nodded, staring at the floor. "Yes, ma'am." Taking a breath, Katie began to outline a constructive path forward. "I'm not here to humiliate you, but this incident must serve as a lesson. I want you and all lounge staff to receive additional training on conflict resolution, implicit bias, and membership protocols. I want no other loyal traveler to endure what happened here." Darren looked up, tears spilling over. "I understand. I'll do anything to make this right. I'm truly sorry." Katie nodded curtly. "I'll be communicating with management to ensure we implement these changes. In the meantime, you may continue your shift. But if this behavior repeats, Or if we find you aren't treating guests with fairness and courtesy, there will be disciplinary measures up to termination. Clear, clear, Darren croaked his voice, trembling with remorse. Katie turned to leave the hush in the lounge, persisting like a force field around her. Although she felt vindicated, her membership confirmed her authority clear. She couldn't shake the lingering weight of disappointment. The biases that led to this confrontation were more pervasive than one rookie manager's overreaction. They were a symptom of a broader issue, one Katie as CEO was determined to address at every level of Delta Airlines. After the tension-filled encounter in the Delta Sky Club lounge, Katie Morgan felt a swirl of emotions. She left the lounge briefly to take a moment for herself in a less crowded area of the terminal. Settling onto an empty bench near a set of large windows, she gazed at the planes outside, lined up along the gates. Normally, the sight of Delta's fleet inspired her the brand she had worked so hard to uphold. But now, a heaviness clung to her thoughts. Her phone lit up with urgent messages from directors and board members who had caught wind of an incident. Apparently, some travelers had tweeted about a Delta CEO being questioned by cops in her own lounge, and the story was already picking up traction online. Katie groaned inwardly. Social media had a knack for amplifying everything, especially controversies. She typed out a quick response to the board, "Handling the situation will update once resolved." She closed her eyes and recalled her father's words from years ago. "Katie, whenever life tests you, rise to the occasion with grace and resolve. Don't shrink, but don't lash out, blindly either." She intended to heed that advice. The airline was her responsibility now, and she had to ensure that neither public confidence nor internal morale was shaken by what had happened. A ping from her phone. It was a text from her executive assistant Carmen, who had heard the rumors and wanted confirmation. Katie typed back a brief note, reassuring Carmen she was fine, then scrolled through the flurry of tweets. She saw both outrage. How could they question the CEO and cynicism corporate PR stunt? She knew the truth was more complex. This was bias and a misguided complaint, not some orchestrated drama. Just then, the phone rang. It was Robert Feng, chairman of Delta's board of directors, a meticulous and somewhat aloof individual who rarely called unless something major was at stake. Katie considered letting it go to voicemail, but decided to answer, "Hello, Robert," she said, keeping her voice level. "Katie," he replied, his tone measured. "I assume you know why I'm calling, I do." A brief silence. "I've been fielding questions from a few board members concerned about the situation in the Sky Club," he continued. "We all want to ensure that the brand remains untarnished. Also, there's talk that the police involvement could cause negative press. Are you all right?" Katie appreciated the concern. "However formal, I'm fine, Robert." It was a misunderstanding that escalated due to poor judgment by a new lounge manager. There's no threat of a lawsuit or anything of that sort, at least not from my side. I've already spoken with him directly. I trust you handled it well. Another pause. We do, however, need a plan to address any fallout. Once the public hears that the CEO of Delta was racially profiled in her own VIP lounge, the criticism could be swift. And if it's not contained, it might reflect poorly on our internal culture. Katie nodded, though Robert couldn't see her. "I'll release a statement clarifying that it was an isolated incident, that we're revisiting staff training, and that I personally do not intend to pursue further action against the manager beyond requiring that training. However, I'll also emphasize Delta's commitment to diversity, fairness, and the well-being of all guests." "Yes, that seems wise," Robert agreed, relief evident in his voice. "But please be prepared for more questions. This might become a media storyline, especially in our corporate hometown of Atlanta. A surge of determination flared within Katie. I know how to handle the media, Robert, and I won't sweep this under the rug. While it's unfortunate it happened to me, I'm more concerned about how many travelers of color face similar confrontations without the advantage of being the CEO. She heard Robert's intake of breath on the other end, perhaps surprised by her candor. All right. Keep me informed. When the call ended, Katie composed herself. She pictured the upcoming press statement, how she'd word it, and how she'd convey that Delta Airlines wasn't just reacting to a single incident, but planning broader training initiatives. Deep down, she recognized an opportunity. Sometimes, adversity paved the way for meaningful reforms. She resolved to expand the scope of unconscious bias training, implement better protocols, and send a clear message. Every traveler deserves respect from economy seat to VIP lounge. Her phone buzzed again. Another text from Carmen. Your flight to New York departs in 2 hours. You want me to confirm you'll still travel today? Katie typed back. Yes, absolutely. Then she stood, brushing imaginary dust off her suit jacket. She was done being rattled. She had a plane to catch, a meeting to lead, and an airline to shape into a model of integrity. The unfortunate events of the afternoon would not derail her but strengthen her resolve, and Katie Morgan was not one to waste such an opportunity. Katie returned to the Delta Sky Club lounge with her head held high. The hush that had followed her earlier departure lingered still. Several guests sat, awkwardly, studiously avoiding eye contact, while a few curious onlookers watched her from behind their phones. Determined to project confidence, Katie walked over to the coffee station and poured herself a fresh cup. Savannah, the kind attendant from earlier, offered her a timid smile as if to say, "I'm sorry this happened." Katie nodded in acknowledgement, then chose a secluded corner of the lounge to sit down. She opened her laptop to finalize an internal memo, a clear, concise directive that would be disseminated to all customer-facing Delta employees. It would summarize the new guidelines for addressing customer complaints, verifying membership statuses discreetly, and generally avoiding any form of bias-induced escalations. With each keystroke, Katie felt a renewed sense of purpose. Minutes later, she noticed a middle-aged man in a grey suit approach cautiously, as though she might dismiss him outright. "Excuse me, Miss Morgan," he said quietly. Katie recognized him as the guest who had earlier jumped to her defense, questioning why staff hadn't simply scanned her membership card. "I just wanted to say, I'm sorry," he continued. "Not that I did anything directly, but I witnessed how you were treated and, well, it was wrong. You've handled it with far more grace than most would." Katie managed a small smile. "I appreciate that. Thank you for speaking up when it mattered." He smiled back, shook her hand, and then returned to his seat. His gesture was a reminder that not everyone looked on passively. Katie was grateful for the allyship. However small, she was about to return to her memo when Darren reappeared, standing at a respectful distance. "Miss Morgan," he began, voice low. "May I speak with you for a moment?" Katie sighed inwardly. She was pressed for time. Her flight left soon, but decided she owed him a moment. "Sure, Darren. Go ahead." He swallowed. I really wanted to apologize again. When I realized who you were, I felt sick, but not because you're the CEO. Even if you were just a regular guest, I was wrong to call the police. I overreacted, and I can't tell you how sorry I am, Katie." Closed her laptop, giving him her full attention. "Darren, I appreciate the apology, and I appreciate that you see how your actions were unjustified, regardless of my position. The point is, that no one, CEO or otherwise, should be subjected to a humiliating scene over a baseless complaint. He nodded vigorously, eyes brimming with regret, I know. The truth is, I'm new in Atlanta. I'm from a smaller town where I never really interacted with a wide range of people. This job was a step up for me, but it's also made me realize how little I know about dealing with diverse customers. When that guy came up to me with his concerns, I just defaulted to the worst-case scenario I see now. How much that's rooted in prejudice, even if I wasn't conscious of it. At the time, Katie studied him for a moment. Under normal circumstances, she might have brushed him off. But there was sincerity in his confession. What matters now is that you learn from this. You'll have an opportunity to attend bias training. I expect you to fully engage with it. If you do, you might become a better manager for having gone through this experience. He offered a shaky smile of relief. I promise I'll do my best. Then, almost as an afterthought, he added, and if you have any specific guidance for me, or if there's a mentorship program within Delta for managers who need help navigating these issues, I'd be grateful. A flicker of respect for his willingness to grow lit inside Katie. I'll see what resources we can make available. She checked her watch, noticing she had about an hour before boarding. I need to catch my flight, Darren, but I appreciate your words. Let's both move forward constructively. Darren nodded, stepping back to let her pass. As Katie made her way toward the private corridor that led to the lounge exit, she caught sight of her reflection in a mirrored pillar, a poised, confident black woman, unafraid to confront injustice even within her own domain. Her phone buzzed again, a reminder of her meeting in New York. Katie powered through the lounge doors, heading toward the gate with renewed determination. She felt sure that while this incident had been humiliating, it would serve as a catalyst for positive changes at Delta. And Katie Morgan, newly minted CEO, was determined to be the driving force behind that transformation. Katie's flight to New York was a blur of thoughts and half-formed plans. She settled into her seat in Delta One, grateful for a moment of solitude behind the plush seat divider. The flight attendants, aware of her role, but trained to respect privacy, nodded politely. After the plane taxied and lifted off, Katie opened her laptop to draft the official statement addressing the incident in the Sky Club. She typed slowly, choosing her words with care. At Delta Airlines, we hold ourselves to the highest standards of customer care. Recently, there was an unfortunate misunderstanding in one of our lounges that resulted in unwarranted questioning of a valid guest who also happens to be a member of our executive leadership. While this incident was highly regrettable, it highlights the ongoing need for enhanced training on unbiased customer relations. As she wrote, Katie recalled the looks on the faces of those in the lounge, shock, discomfort, and a few who seemed almost relieved that prejudice was being called out publicly. She continued, "We will be rolling out additional training programs to ensure all customers feel welcomed and respected, regardless of background or appearance. Delta Airlines is committed to fostering an inclusive environment for travelers and employees alike. We regret any distress this situation may have caused, and we will continue to review and refine our protocols." Sitting back, she reread the draft. It was measured clear, but it didn't shy away from the core issue bias. She saved the document, intending to have the legal and PR teams refine it as needed. Then she gazed out the window, clouds drifting by like patches of cotton. A quiet beep signaled that her phone was connected to the in-flight Wi-Fi notifications, poured in messages from board members, news outlets requesting comments, even a request from a civil rights group wanting to discuss broader diversity initiatives within the airline industry. Katie knew she had to navigate these waters carefully. One misstep could either blow the story out of proportion or downplay the seriousness of what had happened. Part of her longed to issue a blunt statement, acknowledging that racism or bias had played a part. Yet she also had to consider the intricacies of corporate messaging. Being too blunt might alienate stakeholders who insisted it was a mere misunderstanding. Being too vague would infuriate those who wanted a clear stand against discrimination. She would have to find a careful balance, and Katie was no stranger to walking that line. Halfway through the flight, the cabin lights dimmed as the attendants prepared for dinner service. Katie accepted a glass of sparkling water, her appetite waning under the weight of her thoughts. The airline was hers to steer, not just operationally, but morally. She remembered a promise she once made to herself. If I ever have the power to change the system from within, I'll do it. After the meal, Katie decided to use the flight time to finalize the internal memo she'd started in the lounge. This document would be shared with every lounge manager, every supervisor, and eventually the entire customer service staff. She wanted it to reflect not just policy changes, but a deeper ethos, a recognition that customers from all walks of life deserved the same courtesy, and respect bias training was only one part of that puzzle, but an important one. The first line read, "The future of Delta Airlines depends on our collective ability to see each passenger as a valued individual, no exceptions." She paused, letting the words sink in. Then, in a burst of creative clarity, she filled the page with bullet points on how to proactively validate memberships without embarrassment, how to de-escalate tensions without relying on law enforcement for petty suspicions, and how to create a system where staff felt empowered to question discriminatory behavior rather than quietly comply. By the time the plane began its descent into New York, Katie had a solid draft. Outside the window, the Manhattan skyline sparkled in the distance, reminding her of the high-stakes meeting that awaited her the next morning. But for now, she felt a renewed sense of purpose. She had turned a painful, humiliating episode into the catalyst for substantial reforms, and if she had her way, the changes would extend beyond a single lounge incident. They would become woven into the very fabric of Delta's culture. Once on the ground, Katie would have to juggle the immediate demands of the board and the media, but she would not lose sight of the broader mission. People might question her for addressing such a sensitive issue so openly, but Katie Morgan had never been afraid of pushback. In fact, she welcomed it, because pushback often meant she was on the brink of meaningful change. Touching down at John F. Kennedy International Airport. Katie Morgan felt the usual rush of adrenaline that came with arriving in New York, a city of ambition deals and endless complexity. She had a full schedule, an important meeting with potential international partners in the morning, a lunch briefing with the FAA regarding new regulations, and an afternoon press conference about Delta's upcoming route expansions. With so many urgent matters on her plate, one might think the Sky Club incident in Atlanta would fade into the background. Yet Katie found she couldn't stop thinking about it. Checking into her hotel late that evening, she skimmed through the latest social media chatter. A hashtag had sprung up, Darcio Heil Black, referencing Katie's experience. People were furious on her behalf, many sharing their own stories of profiling in VIP lounges, first-class cabins and other spaces that some believed didn't belong to those who looked a certain way. Katie's heart sank reading story after story. This wasn't a rarity, but a persistent phenomenon. The difference was that Katie had the authority to shine a light on it, and more importantly, do something. She slept fitfully, her dreams peppered with images of airports, outraged passengers, and her father reminding her to stay poised. The next morning, Katie awoke with a firm resolve. She would address the media, not only about Delta's route expansions, but also about the steps the airline was taking to promote inclusivity. As she got ready, her mind raced with how best to balance corporate messaging with a personal statement that resonated deeply. When Katie stepped onto the stage at the press conference, the usual flurry of camera shutters greeted her. She wore a sleek grey suit, her expression calm but focused. To her right sat the Delta Communications Director, and to her left, a table with brochures about new flight routes. The first half of the conference proceeded as expected. Questions about flight capacity, environmental impact, and the airline's profitability. Then a journalist from a major news network raised the question everyone was waiting for. "Ms. Morgan, could you comment on the rumored incident in Atlanta, where you, the CEO of Delta, were allegedly questioned by police in your own Sky Club lounge?" A hush fell over the room. Katie's communications director shot her a cautionary look, but Katie nodded. She had prepared for this. Leaning into the microphone, she spoke clearly. "Yes, I can confirm there was an incident. I was in the Delta Sky Club at Hartsfield-Jackson Atlanta International Airport, and a complaint led to police involvement. Ultimately, it was a misunderstanding. My membership was valid, and I posed no threat. But I won't shy away from acknowledging the underlying issue, a bias that too often leads to individuals being viewed with suspicion simply for occupying spaces where others may think they don't belong." She paused, letting that sink in. Cameras flashed. The journalist leaned forward, pen poised. "Are you implying that racial bias was involved?" he asked. Katie's gaze was steady. "I am implying that implicit bias often plays a role whether or not the individuals involved recognize it. This is not unique to Delta, but we have a responsibility to address it within our own organization. Therefore, I'm announcing today that Delta Airlines will implement a new training program aimed at reducing instances of profiling. We will also review our customer complaint protocols to ensure that calling the police is a last resort, not a first response to unverified suspicions." A ripple of murmurs spread through the crowd. Another reporter spoke up. "Some might say this is an overreaction, that it was just an unfortunate mix-up." "What do you say to that?" Katie set her jaw with quiet determination. "I say that even one incident is one too many. If a misunderstanding could escalate to the level of police involvement for me, the CEO, imagine what could happen to a passenger without any institutional power. We owe it to every traveler to do better." Her words hung in the air, and the questions continued. Katie handled them all with the same level of candor, maintaining a balance between personal insight and corporate accountability. By the time the press conference ended, Katie felt mentally drained, but also gratified. The story would undoubtedly make headlines, but she believed it would also spur changes that would outlast any news cycle. The real measure of success would be whether Delta staff, and eventually staff across the airline industry, treated every passenger with respect from the moment they walked into a terminal to the moment they arrived at their destination. As Katie stepped off the stage, her phone buzzed with a new set of notifications. Board members, employees, and supportive messages poured in commending her stance. The blowback would come, she had no illusions about that. But she felt ready. In fact, she welcomed the challenge, because Katie Morgan was about more than just leading a profitable airline. She was about building an equitable flying experience where no one, least of all the CEO, would be singled out merely for existing in a space they rightfully belonged. In the days that followed the press conference, Katie Morgan's name became a fixture on news broadcasts and social media threads. Public opinion split into predictable camps. Many praised her honesty and the steps Delta was taking to address bias. noting that having a high-profile corporate figure call out systemic issues was both brave and long overdue. Others dismissed it as grandstanding, or insisted that race had nothing to do with the lounge incident. Still, Katie pressed on with her reforms, confident that real change was never easy. Back in Atlanta, the changes were already unfolding. Darren, the lounge manager who had summoned the police, was the first to enroll in Delta's newly introduced inclusive customer experience training. Held in a sleek conference room at Delta's headquarters, the program delved into subjects like implicit bias, microaggressions, and respectful conflict resolution. Darren sat in the front row taking copious notes, occasionally wincing as he recognized his own past mistakes. Ironically, the fiasco that nearly cost him his job had become the catalyst for his professional and personal growth. Meanwhile, Katie convened daily meetings with her leadership team to ensure the new protocols were executed effectively. They debated how to track progress. Should they create a system that recorded every police call initiated within Delta lounges worldwide? Should they set up an anonymous hotline for employees who felt pressured by biases from managers or co-workers? Katie pushed for both, believing that data and accountability went hand in hand. Her executive assistant, Carmen, coordinated a flurry of events to keep the momentum going: town halls with employees, discussions with civil rights organizations, and media interviews. In every forum, Katie articulated the same stance. Delta can't solve all of society's problems, but we can set an example. We can be a model of how to treat customers fairly, how to address complaints responsibly, and how to confront biases in real time. Of course, no reform effort was without resistance. Some employees grumbled about political correctness and insisted that Katie's approach was overreaching, but Katie knew that lasting transformations always met inertia. She encouraged open dialogue, even with critics maintaining her steadfast belief that unity in purpose would eventually trump old habits. One afternoon, as she was reviewing pilot scheduling data in her office, Katie received a surprising call from an unexpected source, the older gentleman who had originally lodged the suspicious activity complaint against her in the lounge. She had known the staff identified him, but hadn't expected him to reach out. After a moment's hesitation, she answered Ms. Morgan. He began, his voice shaky. "My name is Harold Porter. I was the one, in the lounge that day." "I'm so sorry." Katie remained silent for a moment, letting him speak, uninterrupted. "I had no idea it was you," he continued. "But honestly, even if you weren't the CEO, I realize now how terrible that was. I let my imagination run wild, thinking you were on your phone, maybe trading something illegal. It sounds so foolish now, saying it out loud. But I wanted to apologize." Katie took a careful breath. "Mr. Porter, thank you for reaching out. I do appreciate your apology. May I ask why you felt the need to label me suspicious in the first place?" He sighed audibly, and Katie pictured him on the other end of the line, wrestling with guilt. "I don't have a good excuse. Maybe I was nervous about some recent news stories. Maybe I saw you in a business suit, whispering into your phone, and my brain conjured up worst-case scenarios. But I realize it's my own prejudice that turned a normal situation into something bigger." Katie's tone softened. "Admitting that is a step forward. I'm not looking to shame you, Mr. Porter. I only hope we can all learn from this." He cleared his throat, sounding relieved. "Yes, ma'am. Thank you for accepting my call. I've actually written a letter to Delta, apologizing for my role in the incident. I just felt I needed to tell you personally." They spoke briefly about how important it was for people to question their biases. By the time they hung up, Katie felt a curious blend of sympathy, caution, and relief. It was rare for someone to own up so directly to their harmful assumptions, but she recognized that public scrutiny played a role in compelling him to step forward after the call. Katie sat back, letting the moment settle. She recalled the swirl of events that had brought her here, from being humiliated in her own lounge to becoming a figurehead for corporate accountability. Listening to Harold Porter's remorse served as a reminder that individuals like corporations could change if given the right push and space to reflect. And Katie Morgan was committed to providing exactly that, a framework for growth and accountability for both employees and customers in a world too often marred by suspicion and prejudice. As weeks turned into a month, the reforms Katie Morgan initiated began taking root. Delta Airlines held mandatory inclusivity training for all lounge staff, gate agents, and customer service representatives, not just in Atlanta, but across major hubs like Los Angeles, International Airport, Detroit, Metropolitan Airport, and John F. Kennedy, International Airport. Katie personally attended some of these sessions, watching as employees grappling with preconceived notions learned practical methods to combat bias. At Hartsfield-Jackson Atlanta International Airport, Darren became something of a poster child for redemption. The ordeal that once threatened to derail his career now positioned him to lead by example. Management assigned him to facilitate smaller breakout sessions where employees could openly discuss scenarios and how to handle them. He admitted his mistakes, freely detailing how fear and inexperience had led him to overreact. Hearing this from a colleague, rather than a top executive, had a tangible impact on staff who might otherwise resist the training as theoretical. Meanwhile, Katie noted a shift in the internal culture. In staff meetings, people felt more comfortable raising questions about diversity and fairness. Flight attendants swapped stories about passengers who had been profiled in the past, brainstorming ways to ensure everyone felt equally welcome on board. Corporate messages from Katie and the board emphasized that inclusion wasn't just a moral imperative, but also a strategic advantage. Travelers are more likely to remain loyal to an airline that treats them with genuine respect. Outside the airline, the press was divided. Some journalists labeled Katie a trailblazer, while others speculated that her sudden push for inclusivity was merely damage control. But Katie ignored the naysayers. Each time she caught wind of a new training program launch or read an email from an employee thanking her for making Delta a safer place to work, she felt justified in her efforts. One morning, Katie received an invitation from a major TV network to appear on a morning show. They wanted to feature her as a guest to discuss the airline's changes since the lounge incident. After consulting with her PR team, Katie decided to accept. She recognized the platform as an opportunity to spread a message of corporate responsibility that could resonate beyond Delta alone. On the day of the broadcast, she sat in a bright studio lights glaring overhead, the city skyline forming a picture-perfect backdrop behind her. The host, a polished journalist named Monica Roth, wasted no time diving into the lounge incident. "Miss Morgan, you've garnered widespread attention for tackling racial bias in your airline. Could you share the turning point that made you decide to take such sweeping actions?" Katie smiled, recalling how a single humiliating moment in the Sky Club had ignited an entire movement within Delta. For me, the turning point was realizing that I wasn't just an isolated victim of a misguided complaint. If this could happen to the CEO of the airline, how many others with less authority or visibility experience this silently? Knowing that made it impossible for me to ignore the problem. Monica nodded, leaning in. "That's an important point, and the reforms you've enacted? Some critics say they're too broad. How do you respond?" Katie took a measured breath. "I believe prejudice can be subtle, even unintentional, but it still causes harm. Broad reforms are necessary to ensure that our policies, training, and overall culture reinforce respect and fairness at every level. We're not simply reacting to negative publicity. We're striving for an authentic transformation that benefits employees, customers, and ultimately our bottom line. Monica tilted her head, studying Katie. Some call you the face of a new era in corporate America, one where CEOs address social issues head-on. Do you feel any extra pressure? Katie's eyes gleamed with quiet resolve. Leadership always comes with pressure, but I consider it an honor to leverage this position for positive change. I want Delta to set an example, because when we do the right thing, it resonates far beyond one incident in a lounge. As the interview wrapped up, Katie felt a surge of hope. Sure, skepticism lingered in some corners, but the tide was turning. Each day, more employees embraced the new protocols. Each day, more customers expressed relief that Delta was tackling these issues openly. And each day, Katie reminded herself that genuine progress is slow, yet unstoppable once enough people commit to it. 2 months after the Sky Club incident, the transformation at Delta Airlines had reached a crucial milestone. The newly instituted protocols had been in effect long enough to gather real data. The frequency of unwarranted police calls had dropped significantly. Customer satisfaction scores nudged upward, and feedback from employees indicated that the bias training sessions were enlightening, if at times uncomfortable. Katie Morgan, now more visible than ever, in her role as CEO, felt the airline was on a path that aligned with her core values, and hopefully the values of every team member. She was working late in her corner office at Delta's Atlanta headquarters one evening, reviewing the quarterly performance report. Despite the swirl of controversy in recent weeks, the airline's numbers looked strong. Passenger loads were steady, and the revenue from premium products had seen a slight uptick. Her phone pinged with a reminder. Stakeholder Town Hall, 7 p.m., virtual meeting link. Katie closed her documents and joined the virtual call from her computer. Board members, department heads, and representatives from several employee councils all appeared in digital windows. Chairman Robert Fang opened the meeting commending the group for steering Delta through a challenging period of public scrutiny. One by one, executives shared updates, operations, marketing, customer relations, each touching on how Katie's initiative to address bias and improve staff training had impacted their departments. When it was Katie's turn to speak, she leaned forward, gazing into the camera. Thank you all for your dedication these past months. As you've noted, our efforts to combat bias and improve the customer experience seem to be making headway. But we must remember, progress is not permanent without continued vigilance. We can't simply pat ourselves on the back and assume the work is done. A few heads nodded vigorously. She continued, I'm proposing we formalize our training programs on a recurring schedule, maybe every 6 months, so the lessons don't fade. We also need to institutionalize a feedback mechanism, allowing employees to voice concerns about discrimination without fear of retaliation. The head of human resources chimed in. That aligns with our observations. Employees are more forthcoming in these sessions than we expected. We've even uncovered a few hotspots of tension we can now address proactively. After more discussion, the meeting ended on a note of cautious optimism. Katie logged off feeling a sense of gratitude for her colleagues who were willing to walk this path with her. She shut down her computer, grabbed her coat, and stepped out of her office into the quiet hallway, reflecting on how far they had come since that fateful day in the lounge. A day that had begun with a humiliating confrontation had grown into a corporate turning point. As she headed toward the parking lot, her phone buzzed. It was a notification about a social media post by Delta's official account. She clicked it and saw a brief video montage of employees, pilots, gate agents, lounge staff, talking about what it meant to uphold Delta's values of respect, safety, and inclusion. The final frame read, "Thank you, Ms. Morgan, for helping us see that every passenger deserves a first-class experience." Katie felt tears prick at the corners of her eyes. That day in the lounge, she could have used her title to quell the situation immediately. She could have demanded the manager be fired or sued the airline for negligence, ironically enough. But instead, she chose a path of growth for both herself and the organization. To see that philosophy resonate across thousands of employees filled her with a deep sense of purpose. Stepping into the cool Atlanta night, Katie looked up at the sky dotted with blinking airplanes, carrying people to destinations near and far. She had once dreamed of an airline that could truly connect people, not just physically, but through shared respect and understanding. Now she was living that dream and guiding it forward. The road ahead remained long, but Katie Morgan was nothing if not resilient. She keyed open her car, slid into the driver's seat, and resolved to keep championing a fair and open airline for all one flight at a time. When police officers questioned a poised black woman in the Delta Sky Club lounge at Hartsfield-Jackson Atlanta International Airport, no one imagined she was actually the CEO of the airline. But Katie Morgan's unassuming demeanor belied her enormous influence. From that tension-filled confrontation emerged a powerful message. Bias and prejudice have no place whether in a cramped economy seat or an exclusive VIP lounge. Under Katie's leadership, Delta Airlines embarked on a transformative journey, instituting widespread training, revising protocols, and embracing a culture of genuine respect for every traveler. Hard karma indeed circled back, not just for those who judged her, but for an entire organization needing to confront its blind spots. If you found this story compelling, please hit the like button, share it with friends who value fairness, and subscribe to the channel for more stories that spark reflection and inspire change. Your support truly makes a difference.